All right, my English teacher friends, Kristian Kuhn coming at you again, affectionately known as the Bob Ross of composition. And I got a good one today. How to question a poem like a professor. We are going to gamify multiple choice test prep. And I know that many teachers, including myself, really struggle to get kids to augment their scores and improve their reads to get better at multiple choice test takers. So I'm going to get into the rationale as to why I gamify and how, in my experience, it's really helped kids improve their reading, which translates into better writing and better test taking. Before I dive in, please subscribe. It's called Kristian Kuhn, the Bob Ross of composition. Spread the word far and wide. Let your friends know, your colleagues, your students. So here's the deal. Let's talk about gamification. So I know some teachers are a little leery of this and they think it's like an inordinate amount of prep, and that it will delay the instructional delivery. Here's the thing. I actually find that gamifying speeds up instruction. I also know that engagement lags the more pedantic I am. So I find it, kids really buy in and invest and participate a lot. And then in terms of like the actual gamification itself, there's been a ton of discussion in the AP groups and other Facebook groups, and you can go in there and take a look at how teachers are gamifying. I have a bunch of stuff in my YouTube channel as well, where I've used Connect 4, Jenga, the Mario Kart, the horse racing. So pick your poison and gamify this however you want. In terms of my classroom, we did the Mario Kart rendition. So here's my thinking. If a student can ask the real good, juicy questions of a text, they're going to fully ascertain the complexity and meaning of the piece. So I sat here for many, many years saying, why are my kids plateauing so early in the year with regards to their multiple choice test scores? And here's the thing. I wasn't teaching them how to read. I wasn't teaching them how to question a text. So gamification teaches them those reading skills that I bring to the text, because oftentimes students are like, dude, Kuhn, how did you find that? How do you see that in the poem? That's possible. You're making that up, right? And it's just how good readers read. And then the other thing is, in terms of being a better test taker, students need to do the heavy lifting. I think oftentimes when we, are going over text in class, we do too much of the thinking for the kids, too much spoon feeding. At least, I did early in my career. And then thirdly, combining the elements of collaboration and competition, I think are crucial to classroom discussion. So something happened after COVID where, the traditional paradigms of, classroom discussion modalities, this don't work as well. So I find that even at the AP level, my students struggle to participate and own and lift the Harkness discussion, the Socratic seminar, and the fishbowl. And then further that, the more poems we gamify, the more poems we read, students begin to see pattern. There's only so many things a poet can do on a theoretical or technical level, and those things just recur over and over again. So I have found, since I started gamifying a lot, that we get to read a lot more poetry, and kids begin to see like those indigenous patterns to the poem. And then the last thing, you couple the reading with the writing and voila, you have a really good reader, speaker, thinker, right? They're going to be really good with exams, and I don't even really care about the exams. They're just going to be better students. And then my last point is this. Good readers dig deep, right? They can see, they can make the observations. And then I've already alluded to this. Good writers are good readers. So at AP Lit level, in order to do FRQ1 and FRQ2 well, students need to ascertain the meaning of the piece and see how the author constructs the meaning with the various terms, devices, techniques. And I find that these gamification strategies kind of are like a two-bird, one-stone scenario. So the poems that I have for this particular gamification exercise are as follows. Flashcards by Rita. Jorge the Church Janitor Finally Quits by Martina Espada, and The Clasp by Sharon Olds. So to give you a sense of the questions that I'm going to ask and like the complexity at which I want my students to read, I'm going to model it for you with a poem called Jorge the Church Janitor Finally Quits. And first, what I'll do is I'll read through the poem, and each slide captures one stanza of the poem, and then I'll show you how I read it and what I see in it and how I cloak my questions around my observations. So here is the poem. Jorge the Church Janitor Finally Quits. No one asks where I am from. I must be from the country of janitors. I've always mopped this floor. Honduras, you are a squatter's camp outside the city of their understanding. No one can speak my name. I host the fiesta of the bathroom, stirring the toilet like a punch bowl. The Spanish music of my name is lost when the guests complain about toilet paper. What they say must be true. I'm smart, but I have a bad attitude. No one knows that I quit tonight. Maybe the mop will push on without me, sniffing along the floor like a crazy squid with stringy gray tentacles. They will call it Jorge. So one of the things I do when I gamify is this, and I think other teachers are like this. Like I've taught AP Lit for over 2 decades, and I love to, play Nostradamus and try to guess which poem is going to be on the test. And I've never been right, but I'm thinking this is like the caliber of poem that could be on there this year. And then I think in terms of this, if this were the poem, what would the bulk of the kids in the country not see? So those kids that get, the complexity and the sophistication, what are they doing with their reads? So I often ask money questions, and I have 2 questions that put students' nose in the text and make them observe a couple of things that ordinarily they would not. So here's my first question. The title of the poem tips us off to the possibility of encountering an ironic situation. How? Jorge the Church Janitor Finally Quits. So I teach my students how to read a title, right? The fact that you can pretty much ascertain that Jorge's Hispanic, he works at a church, and he quits. And you have to ask yourself, well, why would he quit? And I immediately go to the fact that, well, maybe the churchgoers, the parishioners, mistreated him. And I'm like, oh, that's ironic. People that, are holding themselves as Christian and following Jesus's ways, oh, wait, maybe they did something racist towards him, right? So you got to teach kids to read titles and sort of anticipate what they're going to see in the poem. My second question gets at some hardcore cutthroat syntactical reads. And I find with my students, no matter how many years I do this, syntax is tough to teach. And oftentimes my students overlook some things that I think are obvious. And that's what I'm getting at with question number 2. Play the role of an exacting editor. Why do you suppose the first stanza contains a couple of comma splices? How does this add to the meaning of the work as a whole, right? Most of my students did not make that observation, and I talk about the fact that, Espada's got editors. And it's intentional. It's an intentional choice to put the comma splice there. How does it construct meaning? What's his intent? So the rest of my slides here are just my average normal questions. And we'll gamify it, split them up in teams that, offer the best answer, get the points, whether or not you're playing Connect 4, Jenga, Mario, the horse race game, it don't matter. So here's my first question. If we were to pull out a map, we would be hard-pressed to find the country of janitors. What is Espada's intent in naming his origins in this way? Look up the word euphemism. Does this qualify as a euphemism? That's a fantastic question, right? So one of those rich, pregnant moments in the poem that if this were a multiple choice poem or if this were an FRQ1, I would want my students to peg that, land on it, pull it apart and really tussle with the meaning of it. So I think that's a good question. And again, I'm just showing kids how to make the observations, how to read. Number 2. The setting of the poem is a church. Explain the irony of this situation. Refer directly to the text. Number 3, this is what I got cooking. Analyze and interpret the following image. I host the fiesta of the bathroom, stirring the toilet bowl like a punch, stirring the toilet like a punch bowl. And I teach my kids how to annotate. And in preparation for this, I had them annotate, and I just said, underline the pregnant stuff. And most of my kids hit on this. It's very interesting parlance, a very interesting way to, get to some of the essential thematic components of the poem. So I ask a lot of diction analysis questions, and multiple choice tends to do that as well. And then number 4, the poem features objectification and personification. And again, if it's a multiple choice poem, they're definitely going to ask questions about that. If it's an FRQ1 poem, I think the College Board would expect students to pick up on that. Identify both instances and explain how the element creates meaning in the work as a whole. And number 5, this is my last one for this poem. The last line of the poem is, they will call it Jorge. Explain the irony of this. And I chose poems, especially before the exam, to teach kids how to read for irony and then subtle hints of sarcasm. I find those are two really elusive things that my students often overlook, and it goes right over their heads. So just to really shore it up and solidify it, I got a couple of poems that I gamified that look at those elements. As promised, second poem is The Clasp by Sharon. And I'll just show you a couple of the questions that I have in here, and you can download them. They're all for free in the description below. In order to ascertain the poem's meaning, one must first identify the 3 characters. Who's she, he, who's the narrator, right? Basic stuff. So oftentimes multiple choice questions like the first ones get at the heart of it, the gist of it, just the basic stuff. And then explain how the setting and conflict intersect with each other. Use the text to support your answer. And then I really am asking my kids a lot of syntactical questions before the exam. I think that adds, especially in their writing, to their complexity and their sophistication. So one of the things I want them to notice in this poem is that, man, oh man, is that first sentence a wicked long run-on. So here's my question. The first sentence is a very long run-on, which is also truncated by the frequent employment of the comma. Syntactically, how does this create meaning in the work as a whole? And as you can see, I got a 4th and a 5th question. And then we jump to Flashcards by Rita. This is a super trick-rated poem. And as you can see here, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 questions. This sucker's loaded. Very great poem. So again, you can download those questions beneath the description in the video. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at teachingwritingcoach@gmail.com. I also have a webpage, www.teachinghowtowrite.com. Over the next few months, I'm going to be running a slew of professional development. So many of you know that I'm a lead teacher for the National Writing Project. I've presented for NCTE, done a little work with College Board, applied practice, perfection learning. And with my NWP courses, I typically work with like 15, 20, 25 teachers. And I called it the Teach It Right 5-week mastermind. And we always asked for teacher feedback at the end of the course. And overwhelmingly, teachers said, man, oh man, I wish I could have taken that course one-on-one with you, or like got 2 or 3 of my colleagues in the department to work with you, and specifically tailor make and tailor custom course around your heuristics, your alternative grading methods, your word study academy, your nuance academy. Because, for example, week 3, we did rhetorical analysis. I'm an on-level 9th and 10th grade teacher, and we never do rhetorical analysis. So that was kind of a wasted week for me. So if you want to work one-on-one or want me to work with your department and do some training around some of my tricks of the trade, give me an email and we can talk specifics. Another thing that I heard a lot of through National Writing Project was, dude, would love to take Kristian's course, but I'm too busy. I listen to you, so I got a self-paced course. You also can go to that webpage, www.teachinghowtowrite.com, or drop me an email. It's very exhaustive, very comprehensive, very thorough, and it's got a little bit of everything for everyone. And then one of the things that I'm pretty well known for in the circuit are my alternative grading methods. Over the years, I've done a number of workshops on these, and we always pack the house. So if you want to reclaim your evening and weekends and ditch the traditional grading paradigm and learn a slew of alternative grading methods, you can work one-on-one with me, or I could work with your department. We're going to do it over 2 hours, which is plenty of time for you to be self-sufficient at the session's close. That's it for me. Be well, happy gamifying, and I'll keep busting out some more videos in the coming days, weeks, months, and years to come.